Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a very simple one. It's just me repotting some of my orchids into the bigger pots that I use to mount on the walls. So right now it's in this little pot and I'm going to put it into this one. And I think I'm going to do 2, maybe 3 of these. So if you like a relaxing repotting, which I just chat to you a little bit, go ahead and stay. If that's not what you're looking for right now, move on to another video because it's not going to be very interesting, I think. Okay, so let's see. Let's take out the tag first. If I look in the pot, actually, this is the other one that Annabelle sent me. One of them is now pretty much dead. And this is the one that's been doing very well, actually, which is the Phalaenopsis Samera. And you can see in the pot, it has and is actively growing lots of new roots. So this one's doing just fine. Okay, it's a new phone, by the way, so if I make some mistakes with recording or something like that, that's why. I don't quite get how this whole AI works yet. So, got my plant. I'm just going to... I've just been soaking it, by the way, so it's properly hydrated, the roots are nice and wet. I'm just going to move the squeeze size of the pot to this... squeeze the size of the pot to make the roots let go of the sides, unfasten them, so to say. Then I'm going to grab the base of the plant and just pull it out, like so. And now we get to see what the root system is like. And I quite like what I'm seeing, actually. I'm not seeing any dead roots, not really. Oh, this one maybe. Yeah, this is one dead root. So I'll be cutting that. But beyond that, it all looks very, very good. All these little, fat little semi-hydro roots. Or well, in my case, self-watering LECA. A little bit of algal growth here. But it's not so bad. Actually, no, that's not algal growth. That's, I think this part was just close enough to the side of the pot to get some chlorophyll. So you can see a difference in color between the ones that are in the center of the pot and don't get much sunlight, and the ones near to the edge where they get some sunlight. You can see they immediately create some chlorophyll, which creates some coloring on the roots. So it's actually quite fun to see. You have the same phenomenon here, where the underside of the root is white and the side facing the pot side is green. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm just going to get my scissors real quick and cut off that one dead root. Now, funnily enough, I have this quite often with Phalaenopsis. Sometimes you have roots like this, where the top seems quite dead, but then somehow the bottom is completely alive and well and actively growing. So I'm guessing the velamen here is just dead, but the root inside is clearly just fine, and somehow it continued growing from the dead velamen. I don't know how that works, but I'm going to be keeping it. Okay, so the dead root is over here. I'm gonna cut off near the base. There we go. Oh, I found a second dead root over here. It's the one thing I really like about repotting Phalaenopsis. It's really easy and simple to see which roots are dead and which ones are not. With Oncidiums, I have difficulty distinguishing which the dead ones from the live ones, honestly. Anyway, I'm of the opinion that you should cut away as few roots as possible anyway. I don't really see the point of cutting everything away, especially when you're dealing with inorganic media. If I'm sniffling a lot, I'm sorry, I have a cold, so I apologize for sniffing into the microphone. Okay, so these are all the LECA balls we can reuse. They don't decompose or go bad or anything, so there's no problem whatsoever with using them in the new pot. So then we take our new pot. I've already put one wick in, because I always use self-watering LECA, so I always have pots with wicks. But I'm going to be putting in a second one, because these pots are quite a bit taller and I don't want to get an exaggerated dry top layer. So I'm going to be putting this in over here, and I'm going to be getting a paper clip to hold it in place. Because these microfiber cloths are more wicking than the LECA, it can kind of help the water get up that extra distance from the pot. So usually if I just use LECA, the dry layer will be maybe somewhere around here. And now the dry layer is literally just only the very top layer of LECA. So it makes a significant difference, big enough that I actually do this for all of my larger pots. So then we get a spoon, which I have here. It's a really big one, used for salads, so you can scoop the LECA into the pot. And I do this because the LECA is quite rough and I don't really enjoy scooping through it with my hand and touching it, and it feels very rough and at some point it starts to irritate the fingers. So we go like this, and actually I see a little bit of dead development here, so I'll be picking that out. There we go. I'm just gonna put this plant somewhere else. There we go. Actually, I may as well just do it like this. There we go, creating a bottom layer of LECA. Then you take your plant and you place it in the pot and you position it the way you want it to be positioned. So yeah, something like this will do fine. And then you get your LECA and you just keep pouring it in. There you go. So then what you want to do before you continue and put even more LECA in the pots, you kind of want to squeeze around the sides of the pot like we were doing when we were loosening the roots, in order to get the LECA to go in between the spaces between the roots and other spaces between the roots and the pot, and just difficult to get to places. It's best if you massage the pot a bit to make them move into those desired areas. There you go. And of course the smaller bits of LECA, they kind of drop out the bottom through the holes, but you just put them back in and at some point everything settles in a way that nothing drops out anymore. Just want a bit left in here. There. And then we move on to this bowl of LECA, which has been soaking in some of my reverse osmosis water for a while. So this should be well hydrated, full of water, and extremely low in salts, is the idea. I'm just going to drain this of water real fast. I'll be right back. So this is now drained of water, so I no longer have water pouring all over the floor as I do this, which is not a clever thing to do. And we just scoop it into the pot. It really cannot be simple. So you make a couple of scoops. And then you repeat the massaging process. And you can see that it kind of redistributes itself and falls further down to the pot. I find that when you massage it in, sometimes it kind of makes the plants come up out of the pot. So it's best to either start lower down in the pot, which I have not done, or when you're massaging, kind of hold it down. Kind of to limit how far up it jumps. Otherwise you can have it all the way up out of the pot, which could be good, could not be good, depends on what you're going for. But in my case, I want it a little bit lower down to the pot, so I can benefit from the added humidity within the rim of the pot. So now if you look at the pot, for example here, you can see that there's not that much LECA around here. So you might want to massage it, maybe angle it a bit while you massage it and just try and get it in a bit. Rattle it, there we go, and now we have a little bit more. And you just keep doing that while you scoop in more LECA. Okay. It's doing well. The mat is running away from me. There. And so you see now this has been filled up properly. There are no big obvious gaps anywhere where there's no LECA, no breaks in the chain to pull the water up. So we can now just place some LECA on the top until we're happy with how much of the roots are covered. And I think I'm pretty happy with it now. So you can see that most of the roots are properly covered by the LECA. Not all of it though, I don't want to get obsessive about it. And if you lift up the leaves over here, you can see there's a decent amount of LECA there as well, all good. And looking at the side of the pot, everything looks filled up nicely. The one thing I never like about repotting is that, oh, we have a few here, you lose track of the growing root tips. And in this case, we have two nice little growing root tips still here on the side, so I can actually keep an eye on them. But I always quite like it when the roots hit the side of the pot and you can really start to watch them grow. And then the last thing to do with this is to take the paper clips off of the pot. And then lift up the pot. I'm going to zoom out a bit again for this. And then kind of grab the bottom of these microfiber wicks and pull. Because I kind of want them to disappear underneath the edge. There we go. That's what I want. So that they're just underneath the bottom edge. I don't really like seeing them at the top. It kind of doesn't look nice, I think. And we'll do the same with the other one. Just pull it down. Again, some of the smaller LECA might drop out from the bottom, but that's okay, because you can just put them back on top. There we go. And you get your tag. And you just stick it in there. All done. That's a Phalaenopsis Samera. Actually, not entirely all done. I might as well show you the outer pot as well. So, just move this. Here's the outer pot. As you can see, it used to be a pot with holes in, but what I've done is a little bit difficult to show you maybe. I've taken some clear plastic and I've glued it to the bottom with a glue gun. And then I tested the pots and they are in fact waterproof now. And then I just kind of squeeze the hole together so it can't fall off. And then it can hang from my orchid wall by this hook. And this one, you can see how the wicks fall out from the bottom into a reservoir. The reservoir is about this much, it's not that large. And there it is, ready to be put on the wall. There we go. And we'll give it some water. Part 2. So the next orchid that we're going to repot in the exact same manner is another Samera. And this one I got from Clausen Orchids in the Netherlands. And it's actually the reverse cross from the one that Annabelle bought for me. So this is the violacea crossed with bellina. And the one that Annabelle got me is the more classical bellina crossed with violacea. So here we have both the bellina crossed with violacea and the violacea crossed with bellina. And you can see actually that the leaves have a different shape to it. Now, when you have a cross like that, bellina crossed with violacea or violacea crossed with bellina, the first name indicates the pod parent, which is usually one that passes on the more dominant traits compared to the pollen parent, which is mentioned second. So the pollen parent is the one that you take the pollen from the flower, and the pod parent is the one where you actually put the pollen in, and that's where the seed then develops. So with this particular one, the seed pod developed on a bellina, and this one, the seed pod developed on a violacea. Now, violacea tends to have more narrow leaves than a bellina, which we can also see in their offspring. So I just thought it was pretty interesting to show you for it real quick. I think if they're both in bloom ever, hopefully at the same time, I'll make a video with more comparisons on the flower and the shape and the colors and everything else, and how you can see the difference of the influences of the two different pod parents. But not for now. Alright, so we'll continue with the actual repotting after that little sidebar. First let's remove the tag so we don't lose it. There we go. Alright, and this one, I didn't show you actually, but I couldn't really see any new root growth on the edges of the pot. So I was a little bit worried about this one, about how well it was doing, even though the leaves were in okay shape, you know. Compared to the other Samera, I just didn't get that much evidence of growth. But now that I can see the roots, you can see there's actually quite a lot of new growth. It was all just more near the center of the pot rather than the edges. And in fact, this little root here, you can see, this little root here, you can see is starting to branch twice even. You have a lot of new root growth here and here and here and here and here. Those I could see, those were above the LECA, which is why they're also a little bit different in color. This one's branching quite nicely, more growth here. So I have nothing to worry about at all with this Samera. It's doing great. So I will now get the pot in which I will place it. Its new home. Here it is, and I've opted to recycle the wicks that were in the old pot because I'm running out of wicks and these were long enough to run all the way up the pot. And microfiber wicks, they, as far as I know, they don't really decompose. They become dirty. This is mostly dust from the clay pebbles, but that shouldn't harm the plant in the slightest. So we'll now put our little Samera off to the side. Yeah, it has this tear in the new leaf, and I honestly don't know what caused it because I don't remember being there when it happens, and I don't remember seeing it before I went on holiday. And I came back from Christmas holiday and suddenly there was this big tear, and I really don't know what happened. It makes me a bit paranoid about people coming to my house and tearing my orchid leaves, which is of course completely irrational, but I really can't remember what would have caused the tearing. Okay, we've got our bottom layer of LECA there. So now we take our little orchid. Okay, now we center the orchid so it's in the pot the way we want it to be in the pot. Like this, for example. Now the actual axis of the orchid is nicely in the middle. The positioning of the orchid isn't as important with monopodials as with sympodials because it's not going to walk across the pot while it grows. It's just going to stay in the center. But it's good to, well, maybe I should place it a little bit more to the back actually because it's clearly going to grow in this direction, which means that the weight will end up being on this side of the pot. So if I grow it, move it towards the back a little bit more, I might have less balancing issues further down the road. So now, oh, that did not work out as well as the last time. And as before, we'll now take the pot, kind of use your hand to keep the orchid in place and then massage the LECA down in between the gaps. Because you can see, for example, here there's still quite a lot of space without any LECA. So we'll be focusing on filling that up with the rest of the spoonfuls. Alright, so these roots used to be on top of the medium and didn't quite go in. Now it's, you can see it's a little bit below the medium, a few layers down. But since it's at the side of the pot and the LECA is really quite airy, I don't think it will have a large amount of difficulty with the difference in humidity in that area there. We'll find out. And the rest is now a very nice position to continue growing into the pot rather than out of it, which is what they were doing before. So now, as before, I'm just filling up the top layer to make sure that I have as much LECA as I'd like, and that's all of the roots I'd like to have covered in LECA are covered in LECA, so they don't desiccate and dry out on the top layer. There we go. Because that's one thing you really have to keep in mind with LECA in most dry environments, is that the top layer really does dry out, and because when these clay balls dry out, they kind of start to suck moisture and wick moisture from any source it can find, which includes the new root tips that you have, or even still the old roots as well, can desiccate. And that, as well as having too much water all the time, having all the water sucked from it, can also kill your orchid roots. So battling that top layer is something a lot of people struggle with semi-hydro and with self-watering systems. And one way to combat this is to make sure that the roots really are not on the very top of the LECA too much. What I also do is I, like once a day or something, I spray the root zone with some water. My collection isn't that big, so I can actually keep up with doing that. I know a lot of people who have like 400 orchids could never spray their whole collection every day, and that's totally understandable. Other people, they pot their orchids a little lower down into the pot so that they have this kind of this rim to hold down more humidity and have less problems with a dry top layer. Some people also put plastic on top, like just around the root zone. They put some plastic covering to reduce evaporation. And the orchid room, she uses a top layer of, I think she calls it horticultural grit, which is a mix of different kinds of pebbles, which do not wick, they're non-wicking, to kind of reduce evaporation. Kind of like how the plastic does it, but it looks a lot nicer and it's a lot easier to put on and everything. You don't have to struggle with it when you water. I've been looking into trying that myself, but so far I just haven't really had the time to go out and get any of that alpine grit or horticultural grit or whatever they call them. So for now, I'm sticking with this. And here we have the name tag, and we'll be placing that back into the pot like so. And we're done. And I'm going to end with that because I've run out of microfiber wicks to put into the new pots. Here you can see them in their new places on the wall. You have the bellina crossed with violacea over there. And you have the violacea crossed with bellina over there. Pointing things out on the camera is kind of difficult. But we'll see how they like their new home. I'm sure they'll grow just fine. And I'll give you an update when it's worth making an update. So thank you all for watching, and I hope that this video provides some nice background chatter and maybe even taught you a thing or two. So if you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. If you didn't like it, please do leave a comment as to what I can do to improve, because that's far more helpful than just giving a downvote. And if you have anything else to say to me, feel free to leave a comment as well. I always do my best to reply to all of them. And hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more of these kinds of videos. I'll see you all next time. Bye guys!